Welcome to Jubilee for the Earth, a podcast about biodiversity and our sacred story. My name is Wesley Cocazello, and I'm a member of the Justice, Peace, and Ecology team for the Missionary Society of St. Columban. The Columbans are a Catholic congregation of priests and lay people who live in solidarity with those who are made poor and marginalized, including the wounded earth. We put this experience into dialogue with Scripture, Catholic social teaching, and science, and this has compelled us to find ways to restore our relationships with God's creation. We believe that ethical behavior must no longer be confined to our relationship with God and other human beings, but must also include all of creation too. In an article for the Australian Academy of Sciences, Professor Ari Hoffman writes, "Even small changes in average temperatures can have a significant effect upon ecosystems. The interconnected nature of ecosystems means that the loss of species because of climate change can have knock-on effects upon a range of ecosystem functions." Every day, scientists are learning more and more about how climate change accelerates biodiversity loss and about how biodiversity loss worsens climate change. Their work has made it clear that we need to solve both crises together. For example, the United Nations observes that conserving or restoring habitats can remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, while adopting climate-smart ways of farming can significantly reduce greenhouse gas pollution. This shows us how caring for the planet's biodiversity is a great way to care for the planet's climate. Recognizing that we have to address both crises together also allows us to get at an even deeper truth, that climate change and biodiversity loss are not separate problems, but actually are two consequences of one deeper problem. That problem is our over-extractive economy that prioritizes growth at any cost over the common good of all creatures. Even though the climate and biodiversity crises are existential threats to a healthy planet, we must also address their root cause. Because if we don't, then even if we do manage to solve our planet's twin crises, our over-extractive economy will simply keep on creating new ones into the future. Episode 9, Earth's Twin Crises, Biodiversity Loss and Climate Change.
Can you talk about what's happening in your area, or even in Fiji generally, in regard to the experience of the decline in plant and animal life in Fiji?
That was Father Tom Roos. Father Tom served in Fiji from 1976 to 1991, and then again from 2014 to 2019. In 2019, he was elected Columban leader in New Zealand, and now lives and works at the Columban residence in Lower Hutt. Father Tom is talking with Tavita Nakasualu. Tavita has been a human, ecological, and indigenous rights defender in Fiji for the last 15 years. He is now the coordinator for the Columban's Justice, Peace, and Ecology work in the country. Tavita is also a member of the Working Group of Indigenous People at the Pacific Human Rights Defenders Network, which collaborates with the UN Office for the Commissioner of Human Rights in Fiji and the Oceania region.
I will go to my place. If you Google on the map of Vanuatu and type Vunindongoloa, VU Vunindongoloa.
Yeah.
Upstream from Vunindongoloa is my village, about 15 kilometers. Vunindongoloa is on the shore, and my village is upstream from Vunindongoloa. My village is Tamia, sharing the same river. Vunindongoloa is the first ever village to be relocated by government, the entire village, because of rising sea level. And it has, yes, and it's about 15 kilometers away from my village on the same river. Because they've been relocated by the government, the entire village. And it was a big project because of the rise in sea level.
Yes.
And that is very close to me. And they have been relocated to the mountain, about 20 kilometers in. Okay, talking about in general biodiversity and loss of animal, marine, aquatic, and also for me, I could vividly remember as a young kid, one of the main economy for our women to sell a produce is called ota. Oh. It's like a fern.
Yes.
We usually eat it, the leaves. And I could remember going with my mother, because we live between valleys. There's a river and the valley, and otter was abundant. This I'm talking about 25 years ago, while I was still in about 10 years old. Yeah. And otter is one of the main produce that our women sell, including my mom. And they usually go out on a Friday to go and pick it. It's just abundant. And since the early 90s, there has been a frequent change in flooding.
Wow.
And these have moved because the otter plants,
Yes.
and thus have also reduced the income capability of our women, because otter is just naturally growing. Because of the change in climate, change in the flooding becomes higher, otter start to disappear. So as also our agriculture system and economic system start to shift from natural harvesting to agriculture intensive. And this also has, so we went into fallow planting using pesticide, fertilizer, start to change the whole thing of our soil structure, because the river is what comes, we follow the river, and all this goes into the river, affects our marine reef life. Because I did a study in 2010 on just one reef of belonging to my village, to my people, because of the dying corals.
Yeah.
This is because of siltation, the mud, because of excessive mud coming off, because of runoff, because the vegetation has changed, because there have been frequent rainfall. There's little time for nature to recuperate. And that's why the soil is still soft and tender. In comes in the rain and wash them into the river, into the sea, start burying these little. So I did a project in 2010 to find out in my own village, and that's what I found, because of the excessive siltation. Because you go to the reef, you can just see mud, and mud covers seaweed, mud covers coral, it blocks off sunlight, it cuts off oxygen, cuts off sunlight energy, and so the chain goes on. And that is from my own place. And all over Fiji, as we are trying to development is, while it is good, it is also cutting off animal and species migration, their migration path. Yeah. Because we build onto foreshore, we build onto mangroves, we build onto ponds and lakes, and these were meant to be there so that plants and organisms can coexist. While we cut this off, it actually cut off. That's one thing that's happening all around Fiji. Wow. And of course, as you have asked me about black sand. Yep. If you have known, I've been extensively involved in black sand mining research, advocacy, and to stand against it for the past 5 years, until we launched a complete report this year on Ba. Now I'm speaking about Christ the King Ba, because now I am just a new JFPIC coordinator, and Ba comes under our arm. And now I have more leverage to speak on it. And it's online. It was launched last 2 months, by us here and other NGO, Fiji, of course, Australia, Jubilee, Australia. And we were all involved in it. And that is a classic example of biodiversity, because black sand mining is done on the foreshore. The food table of all marine and foreshore creatures, men and marine alike, because that's where they both eat, on the foreshore. Mangrove, foreshore, reef, then deep sea. And black sand is done on that.
Yes.
I have full documentary with me, which I did, which I can send for you to see. Of course, Caritas did, and that is one greatest loss, because black sand mining in Ba will be carried out the next 20 years at a rate of 220 million tons of sand to be extracted. And imagine the death and destruction of those microbic organisms and all other marine life that's what I have been advocating and fighting against 4 years ago until the launch, until today. Very fortunate now that I become GPA C4 Colombian, because Votuamba comes under it.
But how did you see the experience of climate change in your own time, in your own, not only your own village, but also in the Ba area?
That is true. For me, growing up, there is one particular sign that we all know here as indigenous Fijians or Fijians. It's the breadfruit. Now, uto. When you have three fruiting together from one branch, that is a sign that there will be hurricane and will be a big one. Or when we mangoes in abundance, because those are the signs that it happens. I've been noticing. I've been working in disaster with hurricanes for the past 15 years. Yeah. So before Winston hit the first ever Category 5 cyclone to hit Fiji in 2016, the abundance of fruit was amazing, and migration of birds. Migration of birds, and of course the intense heat, because cyclone season here in Fiji is from November to April, and I participated in that, the first ever Category 5 to hit the South Pacific and to hit Fiji was in 2016, Cyclone Winston.
Oh yes, okay. Yeah.
Straight after Cyclone Winston 2016, we have another Category 4. Which consisted of tornado in 2019, Harold. And 2020, last year, again, the second Category 5 cyclone that hit us, Cyclone Yasa. And while we are still reeling from Yasa in December, in comes January, a Category 3, Cyclone Anna, and I was all in that operation. And then while we were still trying to go on, COVID comes in again.
Oh wow!
And that has been the scenario until now that we are speaking.
Thank you for listening to Jubilee for the Earth, Biodiversity and Our Sacred Story. To learn more about the Missionary Society of St. Columban and also how you can help care for our planet's biodiversity, please visit our website at columbanjpe.org/Jubilee Podcast. This podcast was produced by the Missionary Society of St. Columban. The theme music is from Purple Planet Music. All other credits are listed in the show notes. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please consider leaving us a comment or a review. We'd love to hear from you.